Today, the rungs of destiny guide us in our whims towards creation. Creation of something fantastic. Now, it's been a while, historically speaking, since we needed dithering. Because dithering is an old technique to save on memory. Back when we didn't have that many colors available on the computer, because turns out having a bunch of colors was pretty expensive. It takes up a lot of memory to have all those colors. We had to interweave colors together to create the illusion, much like pointillism, of a gradient of sorts. And we call that dithering. And you could still see it today in some video games. It's not completely gone. It's not entirely outdated. I went into Blender and I decided to make a new, fresh, and funky dithering shader for the compositor. As we jump into Blender, I will be showing to you what I have achieved on this mighty Thursday afternoon. I had to check. I literally looked at my clock to see if it told me what day of the week it was. It's 5 o'clock of the week. We're in Blender. Don't freak out. It's not a real alien. It's a pixel art alien. Today, I'm going to show you how you can make your own pixel art shader and dithering shader look pretty damn good. This pixel shader works from the compositor, meaning that your render happens, and during the last stage of rendering, the image is fed into a series of nodes that converts everything to looking kind of pixely and cool. Most pixel shaders use EEVEE for a multitude of reasons, but for this, I'm using Cycles because I wanted the fidelity of shadows and the appeal of Cycles lighting. This shader works both with Cycles and EEVEE if you'd like to use it for either of them. The most important thing is that we start off by pixelating our image, which means lowering the resolution to a resolution that makes sense for pixel art. Most pixel art was designed because it needed to save on memory and it was cheap and we didn't have anti-aliasing, but CRT TV is sort of anti-aliased naturally. And so the resolution of your sprites was relatively low, and then you use the monitor itself to anti-alias them more or less, something like that, to get a decent looking image. If our resolution of this image were to be like pretty high, we would kind of lose the effect more or less of the pixel art. Let's do a render of 4 times the amount of resolution. We'll still have some pixel art elements, but we're not gonna have as many, and I will explain why in just one moment. As you can see here, our pixel art has gotten quite a bit cleaner. You are seeing some moire. I'll put it up on the screen. Effect from us being too zoomed out. That's these strange little patterns, and it's because the pixels in the image are misaligned with the pixels of my monitor, almost like if you're a musician, a polyrhythm, as it kind of alternates between the two different pixels. So this still looks pretty nice, and it still reads somewhat as pixel art, but the pixels are no longer a defining factor in the pixel art. We could go even smaller than that. So let's render it out at really, really tiny. So this is 25% of the image we started with. Very pixely. That's a very pixely image right there. That right there is pixel art right there. That right there. That's part 1. Part 2 is you don't want denoising on your image. The amount of samples you use is up to you. It's not that important. If your samples are too low, you will get some noise in the image, and that could affect your dithering pattern. If you were to turn on denoising is going to do something similar to anti-aliasing, in which it's going to average some of the information in the pixels, and you'll get some blurry artifacting. Like you can see, the light piercing through this structure gets kind of blurred and smeared out. Avoid denoising to keep it strictly crispy and pixely. Our film settings are incredibly important. Oh my God, this is one of the most important settings. What you're gonna do is you're gonna go to here, and right here, let's put this back to its default, which is 1.5 pixels. Pixel filter. This is your anti-aliasing. This is your Blender style anti-aliasing. It gets applied to the whole image. This is kind of an appealing look. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like it. It's nice. It's got that old fuzzy, early kind of 2000s where, you know, We didn't actually want it to be pixel art. It was technology limiting us into creating pixel art style pixel art. But the thing is, we actually wanted realistic renders back then, and we wanted it to look good. And so what we did is we used anti-aliasing to get rid of as much of the pixel art as we possibly could, but we still had the dithering. And that's kind of what this looks like. I think it's a good look. It's appealing, soft look. I'm sorry, I'm zooming in a lot here because I know YouTube is going to crush this with compression. And I want to make sure you can see all the pixels. There are multiple kinds of dithering that will lead to different visual results. The dithering done in games like Clue Finders was a different dithering pattern than like early PS1 games. And so those will end up looking quite different from one another typically. But the patterns and the method remain very similar. This, again, this one that I'm kind of speeding past, all these beautiful nodes up here that are doing so many things, have become proprietary. And I can no longer give away the node structure freely, but I can show you how you can do this yourself. What we're using is a Bayer matrix. And a Bayer matrix is a series of pixels going from the darkest pixel to the lightest pixel that are arranged in such a way so that each of the pixels are about as far away. It's matrix math. I'm not going to explain the matrix math for you, but you can go ahead and download a bunch of these images, and I will link the website to download these images in the description so you could use them yourself. The important thing is Blender 4.2 doesn't wrap images anymore. You can't wrap images in the compositor of Blender 4.2. This is very sad because they're reworking that feature currently. And because we don't have access to that feature, I had to roll back to Blender 4.0. Blender 4.0 is missing even other cooler features like being able to convert a shader back to RGB, which is amazing for pixel art. So we made a trade-off here and we can't do it. Now, I have seen people make the Bayer matrix in the compositor using nodes. Those people are crazy. That's a lot of work. There's so many nodes. It's so many. I looked at one of the node structures. Dude, oh boy, it's getting hot in here. Take this node, and if you can't see your image in the background, this button up here, this is my compositor, by the way. You go up to here, and you could turn this backdrop on and off. Alt-V, zoom on the pattern, and then V to zoom out, and then hold Alt and middle mouse to move this around so you can see it, and that's just kind of way you could visualize within the compositor. I have a viewer set up over here so I can see the image much larger. But the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna bring in an image texture, and we're gonna bring in one of our Bayer patterns. And you could go from 4 pixels to 8 pixel wide patterns. It's just how many levels you'll have in your dither. We're wrapping the image on both axes. You could scale the matrix as well if you want this resolution to not be 1-to-1 with the resolution of your image. Right now, every one of these pixels just gets overlaid with a pixel in the image, right? And that works for how I'm doing things. We're going to multiply our base image, which is what you're seeing right now, with the Bayer pattern. Boom. Okay, this is step 1 towards dithering. Now, what this is doing is just multiplying the base image with the Bayer pattern. Now, what we can do is we could change it to, instead of multiply, be greater than. The greater than node is essentially converting our image into either black or white for on or off. We're detecting if the brightness of a pixel in our image is greater than the brightness in our Bayer pattern, it will turn on. Otherwise, it will turn off. And that's how we get this really cool effect. This is awesome. This is like true old school dithering. And this is what you would see before we had a bunch of colors. Now, there's one other version of this, and that's with colors. Separate out the colors of the image. So we have red, green, and blue here. And we are going to also do the same for this image. Red, green, or blue. And this works well too, this method, if your pattern, well, that's kind of cool. We just two-tone posterize our image right there. That's pretty sick. If it's lighter than 0.5% image, oh, we're gonna do greater than for each of these colors. So we'll do red, we will do green, and we'll do blue. And then we'll bring in our image, the red channel, the green channel, the blue channel. And now we're going to combine color. So we'll take the red, go bring it in here, and you can see now, this is just the red channel interacting with our Bayer matrix. And if we want, we can get rid of that. And this is just the green channel of our image interacting with the matrix. Now we have just the blue channel interacting with the matrix. So we're going to combine them. And now we have what almost looks like a color image, a full color image. But it's actually just those three colors being combined with each other in a way that essentially makes some other colors. I think that's pretty cool. This is an interesting way of doing it. And then you still have, you know, the black and white for value, because if you make certain combinations of red, green, and blue, it creates black. It's a good idea to clamp the colors, because if you do not clamp these values, the value coming into your image can actually be greater than 0 and 1, and sometimes your pixels will wrap around and become inverted, and that looks sort of bizarre. So especially when you start separating and adding colors back together, you can quite easily get values greater than 1, more so when they're manipulated. Let's bring in some AO. So we have our image, channel 1, and then our ambient occlusion, channel 2. And now you're just seeing the ambient occlusion and the image on top of each other. But if we multiply them, now you're getting a little bit of ambient occlusion in the image, which can be kind of cool. Boom, no ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion, no ambient occlusion, ambient occlusion. So what I've done for my render, to give you a hint at the proprietary pixel art, is we didn't use that, but we have something called diffuse color. And diffuse color can actually be activated. If we go down to the render passes, we can toggle on and on different channels. And this is a secret, a well-known secret. This is where you will find access to the ambient occlusion channel. It's also where you will find access to the diffuse color. So this is a pass on the image that contains no lighting data. It is purely the albedo colors of the image. This is an amazing little guy. It's an amazing thing. And it's amazing for a couple of reasons, because let's go back. We got our pixel arts with colors on it, and it's nice. And then we want to bring in a mix color node, right? Now we get a little bit of both. We get our diffuse color and we get the pixels. Instead of color, we go back, bring in threshold. So now we have the diffuse color underneath, and we have the dithering pattern on top of it. If you were to maybe connect our dithering pattern, this is a hint, to a ramp node. Oh, we put this in the wrong spot. What if we took our dithering pattern? Let's get rid of these. We're not going to need them anymore. You already saw how it was done. We're going to connect the values from a ramp. We can change things. Let's say we get rid of the lighter parts of this dithering pattern. Oh shit, what's happening here? Oh my god, that looks kind of familiar. It almost looks like my original render a little bit. But it's not quite. Promise you, it's not quite. There's more going on there. But then all of a sudden, we've cut out all but just a little bit of the dithering. So we get some of our diffuse render, and we get a little bit of our dithering render. And so basically, if you think about it, there's a lot of ways you could manipulate your image to look exactly how you want. Okay? That's all we're talking about here today. So let's skip out of that and we'll go back over to our viewers. So this is our real render. This is that real one. This is that good one. This is that good render. Let's turn off the floor here. Some of you may be wondering, well, it's pixel art, so where's the outline? Every pixel art has an outline. Not every pixel art. Some pixel arts have an outline. You do not need an outline to be a pixel art every time. But we do have one. We do got one right here. Wow, look at that outline right around the UFO. You can see it right at the top of the UFO. You can see it right around this little doohickey, around this moon. Sheesh. So this outline is going to be a little bit disappointing to you guys because the outline method I have here, you can see it. It's not very exciting. We are just dilating. That's a weird word to say. By 1 pixel. We're expanding the image by 1 pixel. That's all we're doing, and then we're overlaying it on the image. So it's just expanding. You can expand it by more than 1 pixel. You get really thick outlines if you really wanted them. That's a 10 pixel outline. But that's all it is. Unfortunately, you can use freestyle lines in Blender, and freestyle lines allow you to do line art on your renders, and you could use things like curvature, silhouette, creases, all of these different elements to manipulate the line art to look exactly how you like. But the problem with the line art in Blender is that you cannot turn anti-aliasing off, which is very sad. So your line can never be truly pixely. It can only be very not pixely. And you could run it through some filters to make it look very pixely, like we did. You could essentially run it through a greater than node, 0 than 1, so that everything that's a little bit blurry and less than, pure black will get deleted, and then you just have sort of a pixely thing left. But it's not perfect. And so instead I've elected to not use it. But the problem is that if you were to export out of here using a background, well, you're not going to get your outline. So anyway, that's how you make pixel art my way in Blender. And you could see here, I've gone ahead and made a sci-fi city, and we got a sci-fi camera. And this is 1 geo node, mind you, but it's broken. And this is very, very sad. This is very sad. So you could see I was trying to make a sci-fi city generator, and I wanted it to look sort of like Blade Runner. And you can see over here, there's a bunch of buildings. All these buildings, all these city blocks. But unfortunately for me, if you have overlapping faces, Cycles can't render it, and it just makes the face black. And so this beautifully cool looking amazing city I made doesn't work. And I wanted a pixel art, cool looking city. Don't worry about how many repeat nodes are going on in here. That's for me to know and for you to find out when I do this better later. I will say you can make this is 1 node setup. This whole buildings, all of them. The whole buildings is 1 node setup. Geonodes are pretty damn nice. There's some pretty good powerful tools in here. So next time we're going to be talking, probably, if I don't get distracted again, about making some other kind of building. Probably going to be a cool one. I bet it's going to be a cool one. And then one day we're going to simulate an entire city. The whole city of New Jersey in Blender. No, not New Jersey. I'm going to make my own city up. It'll be New Jersey. Maybe. Anyway, that's for next time. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on everything there is to know about pixel art this way. Okay, I'll see you later. Bye. I forgot. Please subscribe. Okay, peace.